by the attitude of the Russian authorities. And, well, the Russophobia is unpresent, really, particularly these days.
Are people where you are having a rethink of where Poland wants to be in relation to Europe, in relation to Russia, in relation to the US?
People here expect a real change in the relations between Poland and Russia. And it is actually what every democratically elected government of Poland from 1989 tried to do. They always promised to maintain as good relations with Russia as possible. So now, as the very painful issue of Katyn is on a good path, on a good way to be resolved in a mutually acceptable manner, we can expect that, well, that many aspects of Polish-Russian relations will really change, because as I said, people here do not dislike Russians. We are two very similar nations. Our languages are mutually understandable. We share a big part of our history, including this painful history. Katyn is also a place where Polish people and Russian people were kind of joined together because we suffered from the same regime. In fact, nobody in Poland accused, if you ask people here, nobody in Poland accuses Russians for what happened in Katyn in 1940. They accused Stalin, they accused Stalin's regime. We admit that Russians were the victims of it. So in this circumstances, I don't see really interhuman obstacles to go forward with Russian-Polish reconciliation. And you asked also about the U.S. Well, I don't think that the Polish-American relations have something to do with it. I mean.
Okay, Marek Brzezinski, do Poles make the distinction between the Stalinist regime and the Russian people?
I would rather put it in a different way. The Poles, they make a difference between the nation, the Russians in the street. When Polish people were transported to Siberia after 1863, after 1939, and they were transported to gulags, the Russian people living over there in Siberia, they helped them. And I know many Poles, I know many Germans who were prisoners of war after Stalingrad battle, who told me personally that they survived due to the help of the Russian nation. So on one hand there is a Russian nation, this similarity yes, but on the other hand we suffered a lot from authorities. And it doesn't matter whether they were Soviet or Tsar times. There were constantly problems with the Russian imperialism, okay, for the last 400-500 years. And please have a look at it. Last Wednesday there's a celebration in Katyn and meeting between prime ministers of Russia and Poland, Donald Tusk and Vladimir Putin. And the Russian Guard stops on the Belarus-Russian border 100 Polish pilgrims who are going to participate in this ceremony. And they were checking their papers for such a long time that the ceremony was over. So the sentiment towards the Russian man and Russian woman, I would say it's pretty open. Whereas the certain drawback, certain hostility, I would even say, use this word, is toward the Russian tendency to submit Poland to Kremlin.
All right. A final question for you, Thomas Klau in Brussels. Poland has been one of the success stories of the past couple of years inside the European Union. Would you say that the attitudes that have changed since Donald Tusk became Prime Minister are also in part due to the economic empowerment of the Poles?
I would say that political factors and political dynamics were probably more at play. I mean, Poland went through shock therapy and then through a period of great hardship, and it is clear, of course, that the economic success story which has unfolded over the last few years facilitates probably a policy of détente or constructive engagement with the German neighbour, constructive engagement with Russia, or at least a different kind of relationship, and a policy that is not that of the Kaczynski twins, whilst they were controlling the Polish government's policy. But But I do think there are different strands of political thinking, and also of how to thinking about how to deal with Poland's neighbours, and indeed to some extent Poland's history. In Poland, it's a pluralistic, dynamic society with a very vigorous political debate. And I would not necessarily expect let's say, a decade or two of economic success to homogenize Polish politics to the extent that these kind of debates no longer happen.
Okay.
I think it's very fortunate that we see what we see now, but I wouldn't say this is necessarily the script for the indefinite future.
All right, national unity could be short-lived. Thomas Klau, I want to thank you very much. And I want to thank all of our guests for joining us, George Frederick Dewsbury, Marek Brzezinski, and also from Warsaw, Jakub Kumak, for joining us for the France 24 debate.